Los Angeles, 2012. July 13th. The phone rang at 11:47 a.m. Sylvester Stallone was in his office, working, reading a script, planning the next movie. He saw the number. He didn't recognize it. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Stallone? Yes, this is the Los Angeles Police Department. We need you to come to Studio City. It's about your son. Stallone's hand stopped moving. What happened? The voice on the other end paused. Sir, we need you to come here. Now. Stallone felt something in his chest. A tightening, like a hand was squeezing his heart. Is he okay? Silence. Sir, please. We need you here. Stallone put the phone down. He stood up. His legs felt weak, but he walked. He grabbed his keys, his wallet, his phone. He didn't tell anyone. He just left. In the car he tried to think. He tried to prepare himself. But how do you prepare? How do you get ready for something you've feared your entire life? He thought about the last conversation. 3 weeks ago. Maybe 4. Sage had called. His voice had been normal. Happy, even. Hey, Dad. You free for dinner this week? Stallone had been in a meeting. Or was it a screening? He couldn't remember. I'm swamped, kid. Let me call you back. Sure. No problem. That was it. Let me call you back. But Stallone never did. He'd gotten busy. There was always something. Always another meeting. Another script. Another deadline. He'd meant to call back. He really had. But days became weeks. And now this. Stallone gripped the steering wheel. He didn't ask again. He already knew. The drive took 23 minutes. Stallone didn't remember any of it. He just drove. The street was blocked. Police cars. Ambulance. Yellow tape. Stallone got out of the car. An officer approached him. Mr. Stallone? Stallone didn't answer. I'm sorry, sir. Your son was found deceased in his apartment. Deceased. Not dead. Deceased. Like it was a business transaction. Like it was paperwork. Stallone wanted to correct him. He wanted to say his name is Sage. Not your son. Sage. But he couldn't speak. Stallone looked at the building. A small apartment complex. 4 stories. Sage's window was on the 2nd floor. The curtains were closed. They were always closed. Sage liked privacy. He liked the dark when he was editing films. He'd spend hours in that apartment. Working. Creating. Alone. Stallone had been there twice. Maybe 3 times. He should have come more. He should have knocked on that door more. He should have sat with Sage in that dark room and just talked. But he didn't. Because there was always tomorrow. Except now there wasn't. When? Stallone said. We're not sure yet, sir. The housekeeper found him this morning. He may have been gone for a few days. A few days. His son had been dead. For days. And nobody knew. Not the neighbors. Not his friends. Not Stallone. Stallone walked toward the building. The officer tried to stop him. Sir, you can't go in there. It's a crime scene. That's my son. I understand. But that's my son. The officer looked at him. Then he stepped aside. Stallone walked into the building. Up the stairs. Down the hallway. The door to Sage's apartment was open. Inside there were people. Investigators. Coroner. Photographers. They all stopped when they saw Stallone. Nobody spoke. Stallone looked at the living room. It was messy. Empty bottles. Papers. Film reels stacked in the corner. Sage had been working on something. He always was. One of the investigators approached. Mr. Stallone. I'm Detective Morrison. I'm very sorry for your loss. Stallone didn't look at him. Where is he? He's been taken to the coroner's office. Where was he? Morrison hesitated. In the bedroom, sir. On the bed. Stallone walked to the bedroom. Morrison followed. Sir, please. You don't need to. Stallone stood in the doorway. The bed was unmade. The sheets were crumpled. There was a pillow on the floor. Sage had been lying there. Alone. For days. And nobody had come. Nobody had checked. Nobody had called. Stallone looked around the room. There were posters on the walls. Old movies. Classic films. Sage had loved film history. He'd collect old reels, restore them, preserve them. He'd wanted to be a filmmaker, not an actor. A filmmaker. He told Stallone once, "I don't want to be in front of the camera, Dad. I want to be behind it." Stallone had nodded. He'd said he understood, but did he really? Had he ever really listened, or had he just been waiting for his turn to talk? On the nightstand there was a photo. Stallone walked over. It was from the Rocky V premiere, 1990. Sage was 14. He was standing next to Stallone, both in tuxedos, both smiling. Sage looked so young, so proud, so happy. Stallone picked up the photo. His hands were shaking. He stared at it for a long time. Then he put it in his pocket. Stallone's hands clenched. "We'll need to perform an autopsy," Morrison said, "to determine the cause of death." Stallone turned. "What do you think it was?" "It's too early to say. Sir, there were prescription bottles in the apartment. We'll need toxicology tests." Prescription bottles. The words hung in the air. Stallone knew what that meant. The media would run with it. They'd say Sage was an addict. They'd say he overdosed. They'd turn his death into a headline. And Stallone couldn't stop it. He wasn't an addict. Stallone said. Morrison nodded. "We'll know more soon, sir." Stallone left the apartment. He walked down the stairs, out of the building, past the police, past the reporters who were already gathering. He got in his car. He sat. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat. His phone was ringing. His manager. His publicist. His wife. He didn't answer. He looked at the steering wheel. At his hands gripping it. At the veins showing through his skin. These hands had thrown punches in dozens of movies. These hands had held Oscars. These hands had signed million-dollar contracts. But these hands hadn't held his son. Not enough. Not when it mattered. Stallone closed his eyes. He thought about when Sage was born. December, right after the first Rocky. Stallone had been in the hospital, holding this tiny baby, 7 pounds, crying, fragile. Stallone had looked at him and thought, "I'm going to be the best father in the world." He'd meant it. But somewhere along the way he'd forgot, somewhere between Rocky VII and Rocky III, and Rambo and all the other movies. He'd forgotten. And now Sage was gone. And Stallone was sitting in a car, alone, with nothing but regret. And he thought about the last time he'd seen Sage. It had been 3 weeks ago, maybe 4. Sage had called. He'd wanted to have dinner. Stallone had been busy. He'd said he'd call back. He never did. That was the last time they'd spoken. The funeral was 8 days later. St. Martin of Tours Catholic Church, Los Angeles. The church was full. Family, friends, people from the film industry, people Stallone didn't recognize. Everyone was crying, except Stallone. He sat in the front row, next to his ex-wife Sasha, Sage's mother. She was destroyed. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red. She kept holding a tissue, crumpling it, unfolding it, crumpling it again. Stallone looked at her. He wanted to say something. He wanted to tell her he was sorry. But he couldn't. Because what could he say? That he should have been there more. That he should have called back. That he should have been a better father. All of it was true. None of it mattered now. The priest spoke. He talked about Sage's life. His talent. His passion for film. His kindness. People nodded. They wiped their eyes. Stallone didn't hear any of it. He was looking at the casket. It was closed. He'd wanted it open. He'd wanted to see Sage one more time. But the coroner had advised against it. "It's been too long, Mr. Stallone. Too long. 5 days. That's how long Sage had been dead before anyone found him. 5 days. Stallone kept thinking about those 5 days. What had Sage been thinking in his final moments? Had he been scared? Had he been in pain? Had he called out for anyone? Had he called out for Stallone? Stallone would never know. And that not knowing was worse than anything. He was thinking about Rocky V. The movie he'd made with Sage in 19... He'd played Rocky's son, Robert Balboa Jr. In the movie, Rocky ignores his son. He focuses on training a young boxer. He puts his career before his family. And Robert feels abandoned. There's a scene, near the end, where Robert confronts Rocky. "You never spent time with me. You were never there." Rocky doesn't know what to say. Because it's true, when Stallone had written that scene, he'd thought it was fiction. He'd thought he was just creating drama. But it wasn't fiction. It was real. He'd put his career before his family. He'd put movies before his son. And Sage had felt it. Just like Robert. Stallone had tried to fix it in the movie. Rocky reconnects with his son. They hug. They make peace. But in real life Stallone hadn't fixed it. He just kept working. Years later, in an interview for his Netflix documentary Sly, Stallone would admit it. I try to take something that actually is what I wish I had done in real life. But I wasn't able to do that in reality. He said, and so quite often I would do it theatrically. Magically. He paused. Unfortunately, you put things before your family, and the repercussions are quite radical and devastating. But that was years later. At the funeral Stallone said nothing. He just sat. When the service ended, people came to him. They hugged him. They said they were sorry. Stallone nodded. He shook hands. He thanked them. But he wasn't there. He was somewhere else. He was in Sage's apartment, looking at the empty bed, thinking about the days Sage had been lying there, alone. The autopsy results came 6 weeks later. No drugs. No overdose. Just atherosclerosis. A condition that causes arteries to harden, leading to a heart attack. Sage had been a heavy smoker, which likely contributed. The media had been wrong, but the damage was done. For weeks the headlines had screamed about pills, about addiction, about Hollywood excess. Stallone had released a statement, begging for privacy, begging for respect. When a parent loses a child there is no greater pain. He'd written, Sage was our first child, and the center of our universe. But the media didn't care. They wanted a story, and they got one. Stallone read every article, every headline, every comment. He shouldn't have. His publicist told him not to. But he couldn't stop. He sat in his office, scrolling, reading, torturing himself. Stallone's son dead from drug overdose. Another Hollywood tragedy. Sage Stallone. The price of fame. None of it was true, but the world believed it. And Stallone couldn't do anything about it. One night, he wrote a response. A long statement, explaining everything. But he never posted it. Because what was the point? The truth didn't matter. Sage was still dead. And nothing could change that. The months that followed were the darkest of Stallone's life. He didn't work. He didn't leave the house. He didn't talk to anyone. His wife, Jennifer, tried to help. She sat with him. She held his hand. She told him it wasn't his fault. But Stallone knew better. Because it was his fault. Not the heart attack, not the atherosclerosis, but the distance, the missed calls, the canceled dinners, all of that was his fault. One night, Stallone was sitting in his office. It was late, past midnight. He couldn't sleep. He hadn't slept properly in months. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sage's apartment, the empty bed, the closed curtains. He opened his laptop. He went to YouTube. He searched for Rocky 5. He found the scene, the one where Robert confronts Rocky. He pressed play. On the screen, Sage appeared, 14 years old, angry, hurt. You never spent time with me, Sage yelled at Rocky. You were never there. Stallone watched. Rocky didn't know what to say. He stood there, silent, guilty. Then he said, I'm sorry. But Robert didn't accept it. Sorry doesn't fix anything, Dad. Stallone paused the video. He stared at the screen, at Sage's face, frozen, angry. And he realized something. Sage hadn't been acting in that scene. He'd been telling the truth, his truth, and Stallone had written it. He'd put those words in his son's mouth, but he'd never actually listened to them. He'd thought it was just a movie, but it wasn't. It was real, and for the first time since Sage's death, he cried, because in that scene, he saw everything. He saw the truth, he saw what he'd done, and he saw what he could never fix. Years passed. Stallone went back to work. He made more movies. He promoted them. He smiled for the cameras. But he was different. People noticed. The intensity was still there, the physicality, the commitment. But there was something else now, a sadness, a heaviness. It showed in his eyes. In interviews, when asked about his career, he'd talk about his mistakes, about the things he'd missed, about the things he'd lost. He'd mention Sage, not often, but when he did, his voice would change. It would get quieter, slow, like he was choosing each word carefully. Like he was trying not to break. You think you have time, he'd say. You think there's always tomorrow. But there isn't. He'd pause. Tomorrow doesn't always come. Interviewers would nod. They'd move on to the next question. But Stallone would stay there, in that moment, thinking about Sage, thinking about all the tomorrows that never came. In 2015, Stallone made Creed, a new Rocky movie, but different. Rocky was older now, tired, alone. His wife Adrian was dead. His best friend Paulie was dead. Rocky was training a young fighter, but he didn't care about winning anymore. He just didn't want to be alone. There's a scene in the movie. Rocky visits Adrian's grave. He stands there, talking to her. I miss you, he says. Every day I miss you. Then he says something that breaks everyone watching. I just wish I had more time. When Stallone filmed that scene, the director, Ryan Coogler, noticed something. Stallone wasn't acting. He was crying, real tears. Coogler didn't cut. He let the camera roll, because he knew Stallone wasn't talking to Adrian. He was talking to Sage. After the scene, Stallone sat down. He didn't move for 10 minutes. Nobody approached him. They just let him sit, because they understood. Some pain is too deep for words. In 2023, Stallone released his documentary. In it he talked about Sage. Not for long, just a few minutes, but it was the most honest he'd ever been. He talked about Rocky V, about how the movie mirrored his real life. A lot of that is true, he admitted. Unfortunately, you put things before your family, and the repercussions are quite radical and devastating. He showed footage of him and Sage at the Rocky V premiere. Sage was smiling, excited, proud to be with his father. Stallone watched the footage, and he said something that broke everyone who heard it. There's a line in the movie, I'm so glad he's born, because now I can live through your eyes. He paused. I meant it, but I didn't do it. That's the tragedy. Not that Sage died young, not that it was unexpected, but that Stallone had known. He'd known what mattered. He'd even written it in a movie, but he hadn't lived it. He'd kept working, kept chasing, kept building, and by the time he realized what he'd lost, it was too late. Sage was gone, and Stallone was left with nothing but regret. There's a scene in Creed, the 2015 sequel to Rocky. Rocky visits a cemetery. He stands in front of a grave. Adrian's grave. His wife. He talks to her. He tells her about his life, about his mistakes, and then he says something. I just wish I had more time. When Stallone filmed that scene, he wasn't thinking about Adrian. He was thinking about Sage. Because that's what regret is. It's not sadness. It's not anger. It's the weight of all the things you didn't do, all the calls you didn't make, all the moments you missed, all the time you thought you had, until you didn't. Stallone knows this now, but knowing doesn't change anything. It doesn't bring Sage back. It doesn't give him another chance. It just sits there, heavy, permanent, real. And the question Stallone asks himself every day is the same question we all should ask. Not what do I want to achieve, not what do I want to become, but who do I want to spend time with, before it's too late? Because time doesn't wait, and tomorrow isn't promised. Stallone learned that the hardest way possible. The question is, will you learn it before it's too late?